Welcome to the Rock Solid Family Podcast. This is Merle Hutchinson alongside of my best friend, Linda. Hey, Linda, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
What's that laugh about?
You are in a demo mode.
That has nothing to do with this show.
You are in a demo state of mind. I'm surprised there's not sawdust all over
There
you.
is, actually. You guys, your camera's just far enough away that you can't see
Oh,
it.
you should see our upstairs kitchen right now. It's got a hacksaw sitting on the counter.
Guys, Linda has said, I want a new kitchen. I want a new kitchen. I want a new kitchen. Earlier this week, I said, okay, let's go. And I went to bring my tools out. She said, no, you can't now. We're going to have company this weekend. I'm like, really? Just when I'm getting us, the male brain, when it's go time, it's go time. And you just threw the brakes on me. So here I was like a dog pulling a dog sled all week going, waiting. So they left our house last night.
Last night, yeah.
This
It hasn't
morning,
even been 24 hours.
Game on.
It's been 20 years. I've been asking for paint.
You got to do it now.
Update. And I'm leaving town this week. Like, couldn't you wait till I was gone? No.
There's going to be plenty of work to do while you're gone. So I'm just trying to get the jump on.
You're right. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Maybe
but
we'll do a
that's just
different
our world
show
right
now, guys. We're not talking about Friends or anything today.
Oh, well, tell us what we are talking about.
Well, we're going to jump track a little bit.
Okay.
We've been doing some very different shows, starting the new year, new beginning, all those kinds of things. All of those are good topics. But it's been a while since we've talked about some parenting types things. And in particular, we're going to talk today about maybe a level of your role in your kids and their friends. And there's the helicopter parenting and the bulldozer parenting and all those, but what does it have to do with the friends?
Yeah.
And
what's our role?
Should there be some more interaction or should we have less? So we're going to talk about that. I think, more now than ever, we do have to be very aware. I'm not even sure if my parents knew who all my friends were, they obviously knew the kids in the neighborhood that I hung around with, but the other kids out and about, but there was a general level of etiquette and ethics that all of us kids seemed to follow. Not that everybody was perfect, but I think there was greater trust by our parents.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that was wrong. But
maybe your parents, not mine.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, exactly. But before we start all that, let's thank our sponsors. We want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions, Maxwell Construction, and the Hoosier Ice House for their support of what we do at Rock Solid Families. And if we're new to you and you have no idea who Rock Solid Families is, then please check us out at rocksolidfamilies.org. We are a faith-based coaching organization located in the greater Cincinnati area, and we work with individuals and couples and families every day, working with these kind of questions, right? Parents come to us and say, okay, I have a 10-year-old, or I have a 15-year-old, or I have a 21-year-old. Like, what's my role when it comes to their friendships, especially if you see like a train wreck coming for them? And so, and it does depend on the age of the child.
Sure
and
does.
We're going to talk about that. Yeah. But we also have some things coming up we want to make you more aware of.
Yeah. So this week, coming up, if you guys are listening to this week, so on January 25th, this coming Saturday, as you listen to this, we're going to be doing our end of the month parent training down at the Firehouse in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, down on Tate Street. And so this is our Families Rock program. It's from 8:30 to 12 o'clock. It's $75 per household to come. And guys, it's going to be good. It's going to be really good. We got more and more interest that's coming, and just that makes for a good class because you get more questions and interaction back and forth. But our numbers have always been pretty solid. So
yeah, and we talk about things like this,
yeah.
like in the season, different seasons, your role as a parent, and so and again, that is our intensive. It's a 1 day, 8:30 to 12 every end of every month, but we also have something coming up in February that is free. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we are combining forces, really, I'm just going to say with the city of Batesville and the schools. I mean, there's the YMCA, the Kiwanis, there's other, Safe Passage in on that one?
They are They are promoting it, yes.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of nonprofits, but people who care about the community in the Batesville area, and we are going to be offering our Families Rock program on the Tuesdays in February. Okay, so that's the 4th, 11th, 18th, and 25th. That is going to go from, I think, is that
6 o'clock is dinner.
Yeah, from 6 to, and then we're going to start teaching
6:30.
around 6:30-ish.
Yeah.
There will be childcare provided. It's at the Batesville Intermediate School. All right. So if you are interested, please let us know. You can reach out to our office at 812-576-7625. Mostly, we don't have to have a hard count for everybody, but if you are going to eat or have childcare, we'd like to know just so that we don't leave it short in terms of food or the people to
And if
take
you're
care of the
listening to this
kids.
at the last minute and you haven't registered, you're welcome to come. But again, the advanced registration is mostly for the food and for the childcare.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be 6:30 to 8. And it's kind of cool, hun, because we have incentives that are being sponsored through a grant through the Batesville Kiwanis. And so there's going to be gift cards given away and other resources, and organizations are partnering with us to get some grant money back for those that attend. So so don't forget about that, as well as please save the date for March 13th. It is going to be our second annual partnership banquet at Higher Ground Conference and Retreat Center in West Harrison, Indiana. And so if you listen to us, if you sponsor us, if you partner with us, if you're a client of ours, we would love for you to come, because last year was just an amazing celebration and gathering of all different kinds of people who just really care about families.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And wanna
I
see
think
them
it's
healthy.
important, hun, to say that it's something we need you guys. We keep our fees down very minimal compared to other people who do what we do. And in order for us to do what we do, we rely heavily on donors, sponsorships, and things like that. It's because we have always said money's not going to be your reason for not getting help. But to be able to back that up, we have to have some resources behind us. And you guys have been fantastic. But in this upcoming year, 2025, we want to expand. Not because we just want to, but because there's a need. And so in order to do that, obviously it takes resources. So we need you guys. No shameful plug in that we're asking. Please, if you're interested, show up at our banquet. If you want to know more about that sort of thing, or just donating and helping out that way, reach out to us, because this is a community effort in order for us to do what we do.
Yeah. You can also go to rocksolidfamilies.org and click the donate button if you aren't able to come on March 13th, but want to support what we're doing. And really what we're doing is bringing Christ back into the home.
Right.
We're offering hope and help and healing to people who really, just Google us.
Yeah.
They've never really considered God being involved in their problem or their solution and their family and their home. And so we're just offering another opportunity to really bring some healing and some wholeness into homes and families. And so we know that that's a huge need, and some people don't even know what they're missing. So partner with us and see how God just transforms people's lives and really underwrites this work that we're doing, because we want to hire another coach. We want to have another location, and all of that takes funds that really we don't want to make it so unaffordable for people that they don't come in our doors. Sometimes it is because it is affordable, they come in our doors. And then we have the opportunity to speak hope into their lives.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the topic.
Yes.
Okay, so
friendship.
Yeah, we're going to talk about friendship. Let me just start with a verse. So this is out of John 15, verses 13 through 15. And it just speaks to the importance of the idea of friends and what friends bring to the show for us here. It says, "Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what the master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you." The whole idea that Jesus wants to be our friend, and the idea that friendship is kind of baked into the human DNA, that we all desire it. And why do we desire it? And it comes to the idea that we have come to find out we can't go it alone. We have to serve each other. And no matter whether you're Christian or not, you come to realize that. You need a job. You have to have people work for you. You work for people. And so the idea there is, well, how well does somebody serve you, and how well do you serve others? Like, do they have your interest at heart, and do you have the interest of them at heart? So I think it's really important from the get-go that this is not, ice-breaking news here, that this is, it's fundamental to the human DNA.
Yeah, and so we want, as parents, to guide our kids into how do they develop healthy relationships, right? How do they pick their friends? And so does a parent have a role in that? That's so a lot of times the question we get, like, should I be weighing in? Should I let them, make these bad decisions? And so, Proverbs 22, 24, and 25 says, do not make friends with hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered. Bad company corrupts good character, 1 Corinthians 15, 23 says. So we know that it's a lot of times our direction of our life is by the people we surround ourselves with, right?
Yeah. So the interesting thing here is the desire for friends is innate, the connection that people desire. But the process by which we go out and seek friends and develop friendships, that is a practice. And all of us has been a trial and error. All of us have been burnt, right? We've all, and it's kind of just testing. And we're going to talk about, like, well, what are you actually testing? And your kids, the sooner your kids can know how to test and then what they're testing in friendship, the better and smoother that friendship building process will go. And so, the first idea here is our kids always started, out of interest.
Yeah. They're on the soccer team
They're
together.
on the same teams
They wrestle together.
Yeah. And so there's an interest friendship. We're all in the same neighborhood, right? And so, and kids can just fall right into that, and, nothing right or wrong about it, but hey, we all like to do this. But that's not very good, because
Alone.
We have to couple that. And so what we want to talk about today is the importance of having value-based friendships. Value-based friendships. So it would be great if we played with the kids on the soccer team. It would be great if we played with kids that were nice and respectful. It would be great if we played with kids on the soccer team that were nice and respectful.
Yes, yeah.
Right? So the Venn diagram starts to come together here, where we're trying to get overlap, but your kids aren't going to see that at first, right? They're just going to be gravitating towards things, oh, that kid's funny, or he's cool, or he likes to do what I like to do. And that's just a start, but your kids have to go to the next level.
And
to really do it
sometimes
well.
you recognize that before they do, and sometimes they recognize that before you do. I'll never forget, our oldest son had friends who he played football with and lived in our neighborhood. And I remember one time when he was bored, and I said, why don't you go down the street and ask so-and-so to play? And he kind of looked at me and said, Mom, you do not want me to go play with him. And I was like, why? Well, because he knew things that I didn't. And so he was starting to make those value-based choices because he knew more and knew things that were going on behind closed doors. And I was so thankful for his discernment there. And like, I'd rather be bored at home than go down there and get myself into trouble.
Yeah. So one of the very first things that we need to talk about that is your responsibility as a parent is, are you teaching your kids the values of your home? Are you actively? We've talked about values so often, but how can we not? It's the underpinning of so much of how you do life. And so from a very young age, it is important that in your house, you teach your kids what you guys value. And so the dinner table, the drives in the car, when you're playing a game, how we interact with each other, how we share time, how we share resources, how we show manners, all of these things, these are fundamental to your kids starting to get an idea of what's important and right.
Yeah. But I say that it's more caught than taught. So you're going to have to model it. So if you're lying to your friends, or you're cheating on your spouse, or you are disrespectful to that person in the grocery store, that's what they pick up as the values in your home. So I'm asking you to demonstrate that kindness and that respect and resolving conflict in a healthy way, so that your kids see that in your friendships and in your relationships.
Nope.
And they,
Yeah.
I mean, because otherwise you can't just say, you got to be kind, you got to be respectful, you got to be honest when you're not being that.
Well, I mean, hon, I just get a smile on my face because we talk about those things, being nice to people, being respectful, and then you hop in the car and you're driving in traffic and somebody cuts you off and you flip them the bird.
Yeah.
And you say all kinds of nice things to them, right? And it's like your kid's right there.
Yeah.
And so your kids, even if they don't know the word hypocrite, they know the action is weird and different and something's not right here. So they start to pick up on it that there's a conflict. And so these are the reasons why our talk and our actions, they do have to match, especially if your kid is to kind of get concreted in that, like, no, like through and through, this is how mom and dad operate.
And I'm going to even say one other thing and push back on that even more, especially if you call yourself a Christian. Because the biggest damage is done, the greatest damage is done when you take your kids to church on Sunday and you're fighting with your spouse or you're lying to your kids on Monday.
Yeah.
And so they don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
Because that hypocrite thing is, if that's what church is, if that's what God is, if that's what Christianity is or the Bible, I don't want any part of it. So please, please, we do more damage. I cannot tell you the cleanup that we have done in our office for, and almost like acknowledging, yeah, we failed you. Like, as Christians, we failed you, whether it be your Christian teacher, your Christian coach, or Christian parent, and saying you were a believer and a follower of Christ, but not living it. We literally push people further away from the gospel.
Yeah. Guys, once you really feel like, okay, everybody knows in our house what our values are about, right? And again, this is a daily process. Then you can actually, your kids will pick up on this as well, but then you can teach them discernment. Discernment, as you talked about earlier, hon, how our son was able to discern. Even this was a kid he interacted with frequently through school and sports and stuff. He was able to discern that this behavior is probably not the type of thing that's either going to do well for him or possibly get him in trouble. And so then we start to discern. And I think the important thing, when you teach your kid to discern, the kid that he's wanting to interact with, or that wants to interact with him, will not think of it as discernment. They'll think of him as being judging and being snotty and being uppity. That, who cares, right? Like, at the end of the day, you're responsible for your kid. And so we teach our kid to discern the right from the wrong and to be able to stand for that. So, I notice that the way you treat other kids when we're out playing soccer and the way you talk to the coach and stuff, like, I just can't be part of that.
Yeah.
That's a discernment.
Yeah. And part of the discernment comes from just being around each other. And so you want to meet these kids, your kids' friends. You want to meet their families. So go have pizza with them after the soccer game, right? So you're sitting there with the parents and you're seeing the kids interact. You're inviting the kid to come over to your house and have dinner with you. Hun, out of 5 children, I remember one instance with one of our kids of a friend who did not want to meet us, did not want to sit at the table and talk with us. And that was a huge red flag to me. They didn't look us in the eye. They wouldn't have conversation. They didn't really
I wonder if it's because we were all staring at him.
But he didn't want to be around our home and our family. And so that was a red flag. And we found out later it was definitely an indication of something greater. So please get to know your kids' friends and their families. And you want to be the one that drives them to the movies. You want to be the one that sits with them at the restaurant. You want to hear the conversations, because that's going to give you a clue if that's somebody that you want your child to hang around.
I want to bring up a topic here, hon, that maybe we'll mix the words just a little bit, just so we can have the discussion. But there are certain things we should tolerate in people. I tolerate that they have a different like of music than I do, that they like different food than I do. They like different sports, okay? But the whole generality of speaking tolerance, we do not want to teach our kids to tolerate, in other words, just keep bringing in and being around bad values or bad behaviors. And so this, again, you might think you're splitting hairs, but the idea here as a parent, your kid could get judged. That's why he's a little snot, he's uppity or whatever. It's like, no, I don't want my kid to tolerate another kid who's a bully. I don't want him to tolerate those who lie. And so he doesn't need to stand up and fight against them, but he needs to not tolerate that
Put a
to come
boundary up.
into his life. And so that whole idea of inclusivity and all of that, we have to be really careful. Like, what are you being inclusive about? Different kinds of music, different kinds of foods, different kinds of interests, fine, all day long. But different kinds of values, you really better think long and hard about what you're allowing that inclusivity to. And so think about that. This is not a judgment to heaven and hell on this kid. This is, no, I have a very impressionable child of mine, and it's my responsibility to give them the foundation of values. And then, you know what, when they're adults and they're out doing their thing, if they want to make that adjustment, that will be on them. But you have a responsibility as they are in your house and under your care.
And you want to encourage that communication with your child. Let's say that your child goes over to play with a friend, and then they come home, and you ask them how it went, and you can kind of pick up something happened. I remember this conversation with our daughter after she went over to a friend's, and she felt very uncomfortable. And so I really kind of said, well, what did you feel uncomfortable about? And so she kind of unpacked some of that. And we kind of really worked through that. Like, there was some things that she didn't like to see and she felt weird about and was wondering what was going on behind closed doors. And so yeah, I get it. And so please don't shut down the communication and be so judgmental or narrow-minded that you don't let your child kind of process it with you, right? Because we do want to help them get that discernment themselves.
And we talked about, so as parents, we also then have to reflect out those good values, right? But it's great when your kids are strong enough to start to create their own little natural boundaries. They make a discernment, and they say, no, I'm not going to let that happen or be in my life. But the reality of it is not many kids can actually do that. When I'm talking elementary kids, I'm talking early junior high for sure.
Yeah.
That the peer pressure, the social stress of that is really difficult. And so it is your job to actually start placing boundaries on your child's friendships, okay? Again, I do want to learn about them.
Especially in season 2, which is the elementary early.
It's a 13 or so, yeah. So that you're going to place boundaries, like, no.
Not spend the night.
You're not spending the night, or you're not going to hang around that kid until he does come over for an afternoon and we get to all kind of hang out. Like, you're going to place boundaries on them, and you're not going to apologize for that. Because your kid can't quite do that yet, right? It takes some guts to do that, right?
Yeah.
And because your kid's not out there to offend people he knows. So, and you're not out to offend people, but you are out to protect and help guide your kids. So start setting appropriate boundaries and don't apologize for it. Tell them right up front why you're doing it. Well, I need to know this kid a little bit better, or I see that this kid or this family that this kid comes from partakes in this, and we just don't do that.
Okay, so as you're saying that, we're going to have to say this too. That's why we believe a smartphone and social media is a no-no at this stage, because you lose the right for that voice.
100%,
you lose the awareness of what's going on if they're snapping back and forth, or they have this secret text thread going on with their buddies, and they're swapping pictures, or they're sneaking out, or I'm just saying, like, that just opens up Pandora's box, because you're right. They don't know how to navigate it. They don't know what to do when that girl says, send me a nudie, or that guy says, hey, why don't you sneak some beer and come over to my house? Like,
or just the language, right?
Yeah,
like we saw that
just
with
nasty.
one of our sons, like the language, we're like, really? Like, you're 13 and that stuff's coming across. And so he got his phone at 13. He lost it at like 13
and a
day.
half. Yeah. So the point is, like, it's too early. It's too early. And if they say, but everybody has it, or, if you loved me, like, please, I know that sometimes we let that cow out of the barn and then we don't know how to get it back, that genie back in the bottle. But I'm just telling you that this is why, because you have no control over navigating their friends at that stage. But hopefully, if you do this season well in season 2, which is the leadership stage until 13, 14 years old, then when they've shown themselves worthy and kind of adhere to your values, then you can let go slow by giving them some freedoms, knowing and thinking that maybe they understand where they should go with those friendships.
Yeah, and I'd say
it's not a perfect science, as we know.
Yeah,
but
better
chance.
The next area of that is don't hesitate and in fact expect and demand it, that you get to know your kids' friends and their families. It's not that you have to be intimately involved with their families as they're your number one friends, but get to know them. And that could be, hey, you happen to be at the basketball game and you sit next to the parents of the kid that your son wants to hang out with. Right? Yeah. Get to know them a little bit. I think, that will show you so much in terms of how they interact, how they operate. You won't find, it won't take long at all. Yeah. And you'll see that there's a certain family value that they're upholding or not.
And those are those early teen years, 13, 14, 15, 16, before they get their license. Because the minute they get their license and a job, like, you're not involved in that much anymore. You're not in the car with them. You're not driving them places and chauffeuring their friends. And so this is really important as we transition into the teen years, that you do step back and not monitor every single interaction, because you're not going to be able to, especially if they do have a smartphone. But the goal would be that you still have connection, that you still are the chauffeur that takes them to the movies, or you do have the girls over for a sleepover, and that you get to see and monitor and their language and their choices and that kind of stuff. And if they violate those family values, it's on them. That the repercussions are theirs, their consequences are theirs. Like, you made that choice. Yeah. You knew what our values were. We gave you that freedom, and with freedom comes responsibility. And so if you're going to be irresponsible, then you lose your freedom. Yeah. I always say, our values don't change based off of your mood or the circumstances. Our values are our values. That's why they are the foundation. They don't change or move. Yeah. And the next thing I think is really important is, all through this process as your kids are growing, is to have an effective line of communication. And sometimes words are not communication. And so this is really difficult. I think it depends on your kids. We've had kids in our house that talk, and everything. And we've had kids that I didn't have anything to say. What do I have to talk about? So you're going to have that across the board. I think it is your job. You are the adult. It's your job to learn to do that dance with them. If you have a kid who's quiet and he just doesn't have a lot to say, and you're constantly, tell me about your friends, they'll shut down even more and more. And we've had that, we've had to learn to dance. Like, okay, I got to back off. I can't be constantly, because then it comes across as that nagging, and they shut down. Dads, you actually have a great opportunity to get into your kid's head, your boys especially, by just asking how they're doing. I mean, you're their hero, and because you're dad, and if you're just checking in, hey, bud, how you doing? And just to get them a little bit more willing to talk. Now, they're not always going to go deep on you, but that's okay. If you've already established a means of communication and a comfort level of communication, when things do get a little sticky, it's not going to be foreign to have that conversation. So always keeping that line of communication going is so important. And where do we, dinner table, car rides, that's where you're always putting fertilizer on the communication process. Yeah. But again, that phone is such a doorway into a lot of unhealthy relationships. And so please, I would still have some monitoring going on, some limits and filters going on. I don't let it sleep in their room. I would, have the password and permission that's a, it's not their phone, it's your phone. Yep. And so, and have consequences that phone or, restrictions happen if you don't follow the values, right? Yeah. Not saying they're always going to get it right and they're not going to blow it, but the fact is that they know, okay, if I do this action, this is the consequence. The Bible says we reap what we sow. But if all of a sudden, you said it too, hon, if you change your values midstream, because let's say, oh gosh, well, she really wants to be sexually active, so I'll go get birth control. Or
she's going to do it anyway.
She's going to do it anyway. Or I'll let him spend the night because, or I'll go buy the beer. It'd be better if they drank in our home. Let's set the values now so that when they have these challenging questions for you, or they want to kind of, implode the values. You're like, no, this is what we said are the values when you were 12. It hasn't changed just because it's more tempting at 16. And so stay the course, mom and dad. Please, you're the parent. And don't make empty threats. If you say, if you do this, you'll lose your car, you'll lose your phone, then do it. Because then they know I will reap what I sow. There are consequences for my actions.
Yeah. It also takes the emotion out and thinking on your feet. Like, oh, no, they just did this. Like, I told you 2 years ago what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's a great scripture here out of Proverbs 13:20 that your kids should start to hear from you as a parent. Like, oh, I heard this before. And it is Proverbs 13:20, walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. Yeah. And,
I just read that before.
Yeah. Well, did you read that?
Yeah, I read that one too.
Okay.
But I love it because it is so important.
Yeah. And that idea is your kids will not see that.
No.
They'll get it confused with the kid who's fun or cool and exciting.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, they're in the middle of it. But I'm going to throw a little caveat on that. Sometimes your kid is the one who is the fool. Sometimes it's your kid who's actually bringing the others down. And so it's important to recognize that sometimes your kid's getting in trouble and you're like, well, it's because you're hanging around this kid. It might be your kid that other people are starting to avoid because, and listen, we've had that in our home. So so you have to take a close look. Don't always think that you need to blame the other people.
No.
You need to first look in your home and see what you guys are doing, and then you can consider whether it's an outside source that's bringing that in.
And that's why there's got to be consequences for actions, whether it started with you or started with a friend. At the age of teenagehood, when they are becoming a teen, they need to know, like, there's going to be consequences because eventually they're going to turn 18 and their consequences are going to be much greater, right? And so part of it is surrounding them with healthy opportunities for good friendships. I'm not saying the church is perfect, but man, I remember some of the most impactful relationships started with things like church camp. Right? Or youth group or young life, something, or a sports team where, like, I had to wrestle, and so I had to be clear-minded, sober-minded, because I had to get up at 5 o'clock to wrestle. Or, that traveling soccer team that, expected me to be at my best physically. So, like, surround them with healthy people, not perfect people, but healthier people who are not sitting at home, eating Doritos and playing video games all day, and they're giving up on school, and they're going to juvie. Like, let's try to help them find those healthy friends and give them those opportunities.
And as you're talking about that, I think of the amount of time that a couple older kiddos worked in the wrestling arena. And, there was a mix of kids there, right? Mix of kids there from different backgrounds. But one thing that allowed you and I to have good faith in that was that the coach shared our values.
Yep.
And so when we would hear the coach talk, it was kind of like, oh, that's how we talk.
Yeah.
That's what we say.
Expectations.
So that's if you're putting your kid out there on a team or in a program, and obviously, as you said before, you're not going to be able to track every single kid and interaction that your kid has. But if you know that for the next 2 hours at that practice, that coach is going to be speaking very similar to what your values represent, you can have a lot more faith that he's going to hold those kids to that. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
We gave our coaches permission. If our kid steps that line based off of what you're projecting as the values, you have our permission to come on him however you need to.
And so that's also a warning sign when you have a child who maybe was on a team or was in a group, and all of a sudden they start pulling away, and that group and team used to be healthy for them. That's a red flag. Like, you need to dig a little deeper. Why are you quitting, right? Why are you pulling away from that friend group? Is it because, like you said, I'm the fool? Am I the fool that nobody wants to walk with anymore? So please, Proverbs 13:20 is really the mantra that we want to live by, that we want to walk with the wise. We want to be wise. We want our children to be wise, because a companion of fools suffers great harm, and we don't want that for our kids. So we're praying that this helps. We know that it doesn't solve all the problems. There's a lot of caveats that come in, but if there's something that we can help you walk alongside with you as parents, give us a call. Give us a call at 812-576-ROCK. That's 812-576-7625.
All right, guys, I hope this information was, nothing's new under the sun, right? So hopefully it just sparked some of your thinking. If you are in this situation, it'll take a moment to kind of think about what you'd like to do. If you know a friend or family member that's kind of, their kid is struggling in this situation, help them out. Share this show. We greatly appreciate it, and we hope that they appreciate that you took the time to think about them and share the show. Again, we want to thank our sponsors. We want to thank Maxwell Construction, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and the Hoosier Ice House. We also want to thank all of you guys who continue to sponsor and donate to everything that we do here at Rock Solid Families, because as we talked about at the beginning of the show, you guys are the reason why this all happens. So we want to thank you for that.
And we want to thank God for the opportunities that we have. You know, as we celebrate, we're getting into our 7th year at Rock Solid Families, and we couldn't have done any of this without the Lord and His guidance and His provision and His protection of this ministry. And so we're so thankful for the opportunity. We really do consider it a privilege to walk alongside thousands of families in our 7 years and, you know, really helping them find that hope and healing. And so we hope that we can do that for you too. So thank you so much for listening to the Rock Solid Families podcast, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day.
Rock Solid Families wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. Casey's has grown to be one of the largest and most unique garden centers and gift shops in the Cincinnati tri-state area. Whether you are looking to take on that next landscape project or simply add a little home decor to your house, Casey's has you covered. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Call them today at 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home. Rock Solid Families wants to thank Maxwell Construction for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. For over 30 years, Maxwell Construction has been a leader in turning dreams into realities, building schools, banks, restaurants, and many other commercial and public facilities. Maxwell Construction has made it their priority to not just build buildings, but to build into their community. So if you have any construction needs, call them at 812-537-2200.
Rock Solid Families would like to thank Hoosier Ice House for being a proud sponsor of the Rock Solid Families podcast. In the heart of historic Lawrenceburg, Indiana, the Ice House is at the corner of Vine and High Streets. The historic building evokes a feeling of comfort with spacious indoor and outdoor dining, a large bar, and comfortable dining areas. Large enough to host parties, yet intimate enough to feel like your favorite neighborhood restaurant. So thank you again for the Hoosier Ice House for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast.